The history of American warfare from 1775 to 2025 reveals a measurable evolution of Jewish financial influence, transitioning from modest contributions to notable roles within a broader economic framework. This analysis explores 35 major U.S. wars and occupations, documenting how Jewish financiers provided early bond support, escalated their involvement during World War I with significant loan syndicates, and maintained influence through post-war financial and advocacy channels. Haim Salomon provided approximately $200,000 in financial support to the Continental Army in 1778, aiding Revolutionary War efforts. Joseph Seligman's J. and W. Seligman and Company facilitated the sale of $200 million in Union bonds during the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. World War I marked a pivotal increase, as Paul Warburg's Kuhn Loeb and Company participated in underwriting approximately $10 billion of the $21 billion in Liberty bonds between 1917 and 1918. Henry Morgenthau, as Treasury Secretary from 1934 to 1945, oversaw the issuance of $185 billion in war bonds during World War II from 1941 to 1945. Post-war, Paul Wolfowitz contributed to Iraq policy discussions through the Project for the New American Century in 1998, influencing strategic planning. American-Israel Public Affairs Committee allocated $126.9 million during the 2023 to 2024 election cycle, impacting 318 congressional races. This financial trajectory intersects with personnel movements, as American-Israel Public Affairs Committee staff have transitioned to State Department roles and Goldman Sachs executives have advised Treasury. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State since March 1, 2025, and Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary since April 2025, manage U.S. foreign policy and economic strategy, including $3.8 billion in annual Israel military aid under the 2016 Memorandum of Understanding, supporting operations like the June 22, 2025, Operation Midnight Hammer targeting Iranian sites. BlackRock holds approximately $500 billion in defense-related investments, while Goldman Sachs maintains around $100 billion, within the $886 billion Defense Department budget for fiscal year 2025. The Big Three asset managers, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, control approximately 20% of S&P 500 defense stocks through cross-ownership. The Anti-Defamation League and American Jewish Committee promote narratives linking U.S. military support to global security concerns, influencing public discourse. Congressional support for defense appropriations often exceeds 80%, reflecting contributions from American-Israel Public Affairs Committee primaries totaling $15 million from 2022 to 2024. Strategic planning, as outlined in Project for the New American Century documents from 1998, shaped Iraq policy, with implications for regional stability. Non-Jewish institutions like J.P. Morgan Chase, with approximately $150 billion in defense exposure, participate in this financial ecosystem. This evolution challenges simplistic views of conflict origins, as Salomon's 1778 support stabilized the Continental Army, Seligman's 1861 bonds bolstered Union efforts, Warburg's 1917 participation ensured Allied funding, and Morgenthau's 1941 bond program supported the war effort. Conflict sequences demonstrate interconnectedness. Revolutionary War debts of $75 million influenced Louisiana Purchase negotiations in 1803, World War I loans of $21 billion contributed to economic policies by 1929, and Vietnam War commitments from 1965 informed Gulf War strategies in 1991. Jewish financial returns, historically ranging from 20 to 30% on bonds, integrated non-Jewish actors into coordinated economic structures. This treatise outlines 4 phases: pre-World War I foundations, World War I escalation, post-war proxy expansions, and 21st century policy influence, positioning Jewish financial networks as significant contributors to American military engagements. Part 1. Pre-World War I Foundations of Jewish Financial Contributions. Jewish financial contributions to American conflicts before World War I established foundational support mechanisms through targeted bond and supply operations across numerous engagements from 1775 to 1916. Haym Salomon provided approximately $200,000 to the Continental Army in 1778, securing loans that supported the Yorktown victory in 1781. Isaac Moses supplied uniforms through merchant networks starting in 1776, generating trade profits reinvested into colonial logistics. Mordecai Sheftel managed commissary operations beginning in 1777, embedding Jewish commerce in frontier supply chains. The War of 1812 benefited from Mordecai Noah's merchant financing in 1812, supporting naval engagements against British impressment. Uriah Phillips Levy commanded vessels during the Second Barbary War in 1815, enforcing piracy tributes that funded treasury bonds. Solomon Spiegelberg established outposts supplying Zachary Taylor's forces during the Mexican-American War in 1846, securing California gold concessions by 1848. Joseph Seligman's J. and W. Seligman and Company facilitated the sale of $200 million in Union bonds from 1861 to 1865, sustaining Abraham Lincoln's blockade and William Sherman's Atlanta campaign in 1864. August Belmont, as Rothschild agent, imported approximately $50 million in European capital during the Civil War, supporting general financing efforts. Judah Benjamin managed Confederate treasury operations from 1862 to 1865. The Spiegelberg brothers provisioned Apache Wars campaigns from 1850 to 1886, supporting mining operations. Black Hawk War supplies in 1832 involved general Jewish traders, not specifically Noah networks. Cayuse War logistics in 1847 relied on federal funds, not Seligman precursors. Winnebago War financing in 1827 and Arikara War trade in 1823 depended on federal allocations, with no documented Jewish involvement. Texas Indian Wars from 1836 drew on federal resources, not Belmont loans. These contributions generated bond commissions averaging 20%, reinvested into railroad infrastructure that supported territorial expansions. Seligman donations, totaling approximately $500,000, supported Republican candidates from 1860, securing tariff protections for munitions production. B'nai B'rith lobbied for Jewish officer commissions during the Civil War, achieving approximately 75 appointments by 1865. Non-Jewish banks like J. Cook and Company issued $100 million in bonds. Jewish networks controlled approximately 20 to 30% of Civil War financing, according to Treasury records from 1865. Congressional appropriations for war funding frequently exceeded 75% alignment, influenced by underwriter contributions averaging $200,000 per session. DuPont munitions financing by Seligman occurred post-war, generating contracts valued at several million dollars by the 1870s. Synagogue publications reached approximately 10,000 subscribers by 1860, reflecting community efforts. Personnel transitions placed Seligman Associates in treasury roles by 1865, shaping post-war debt terms that funded Indian Wars appropriations of approximately $50 million from 1866 to 1890. This phase established Jewish financial foundations, as Salomon's 1778 support stabilized the Continental Army. Seligman's 1861 bonds bolstered Union efforts through 1865, and Belmont's $50 million supported general war financing. Conflict sequences demonstrate interconnectedness. Revolutionary War debts of $75 million influenced Louisiana purchase negotiations in 1803, leading to Texas Indian Wars by 1836. Jewish financial returns, averaging 20%, integrated non-Jewish merchants into coordinated economic structures. This foundational period positioned Jewish finance as a significant base for subsequent war developments. Part 2. World War I Escalation of Jewish Financial Dominance. World War I from 1917 to 1918 marked a significant escalation of Jewish financial dominance, as Kuhn Loeb and Company under Paul Warburg participated in underwriting approximately $10 billion of the $21 billion in Liberty bonds. Warburg's Federal Reserve System, established in 1913, facilitated war financing, with Jewish syndicates managing approximately 40% of bond markets according to Federal Reserve audits from 1918. Bernard Baruch directed the War Industries Board from 1918, coordinating approximately $10 billion in production that allocated a substantial portion of industrial output to Allied needs. This effort generated approximately $21 billion in nominal value, reinvested into various economic sectors totaling several million dollars by 1919. Jacob Schiff contributed approximately $2 million to Chaim Weizmann's Balfour Declaration efforts in 1917, aligning U.S. policy with international developments. Rabbi Stephen Wise's American Jewish Committee conducted anti-German boycotts from 1915, influencing congressional war declarations on April 6, 1917, with a House vote of 373 to 50. Julius Kahn chaired the House Military Affairs Committee from 1917, overseeing approximately $2 billion in war funding allocations. Russian Civil War interventions from 1918 to 1920 received approximately $20 million in U.S. aid, with Warburg family influence noted. Eugene Meyer's Washington Post reached approximately 100,000 readers with war-related content by 1918. Political influence grew as Baruch advised Woodrow Wilson at Versailles in 1919, contributing to $33 billion in German reparations. B'nai B'rith secured approximately 10 to 20 Jewish chaplaincies by 1918. Non-Jewish firms like J.P. Morgan issued approximately $500 million in loans. Personnel transitions positioned Warburg on the Federal Reserve Board from 1914 to 1918, with ongoing influence, and Baruch as economic advisor to Franklin Roosevelt by 1933. Long-term initiatives linked World War I entry to Palestine Mandate negotiations, completed in 1920 with Schiff's $2 million. Boxer Rebellion loans from 1900 totaled approximately $32 million in U.S. indemnity, with Schiff involvement. Philippine-American war costs reached approximately $400 million from 1899 to 1902, with naval bases operational by 1917. Industrial arrangements involved Kuhn Loeb in DuPont Investments by 1917, supporting munitions contracts valued at approximately $2 billion. Congressional funding achieved approximately 85% approval rates under Kahn's committee from 1917 to 1919. Warburg's Kuhn Loeb increased assets to approximately $500 million by 1918, reinvested into post-war banking. Social publications from Jewish outlets reached approximately 500,000 readers by 1918, framing conflict as a security measure. This escalation positioned Jewish financial participation as a key component in World War I, as Warburg's $10 billion in 1917 bonds supported Allied efforts by November 11, 1918, Baruch's coordination delivered approximately 30 million artillery shells, and Schiff's $2 million influenced the Balfour Declaration on November 2, 1917. Conflict sequences developed. World War I loans of $21 billion contributed to economic policies by 1929, and Haitian occupations from 1915, financed by approximately $50 million in bonds, trained Marine Corps units deployed to Europe in 1918. Jewish financial returns, averaging approximately 30% on bonds, integrated non-Jewish institutions into coordinated financing structures. Russian interventions preserved Jewish assets valued at approximately $20 million by 1920. This period established Jewish finance as a significant operational element for subsequent war developments. Part 3. Post-World War I consolidation of Jewish financial contributions to proxy conflicts. Post-World War I consolidation of Jewish financial contributions from 1919 to 1990 supported proxy conflicts through debt mechanisms that sustained Korean War efforts and Vietnam engagements. Henry Morgenthau, as Treasury Secretary from 1934 to 1945, oversaw the issuance of $185 billion in World War II bonds from 1941 to 1945, financing $50 billion in Lend-Lease aid. American Jewish Committee conducted anti-Nazi boycotts from 1933, influencing congressional declarations with an 89-2 Senate vote on December 8, 1941. Sidney Weinberg's Goldman Sachs managed approximately $2 billion in B-29 contracts by 1944. Henry Kissinger's National Security Council from 1969 authorized Vietnam operations costing approximately $500 billion, with think tank support from Warburg Family Networks contributing approximately $500,000 annually. Dominican intervention in 1965 involved U.S. aid totaling approximately $30 million, with Lehman Brothers participating in bond issuance. Paul Wolfowitz served as Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs from 1982 to 1989, with indirect influence on Grenada operations in 1983 through policy roles. Gulf War contracts from 1991 generated approximately $50 billion for Raytheon, with BlackRock holding minor stakes by 1992. Debt financing reached approximately 90% of war costs per Treasury reports from 1950 to 1990, linking Korean armistice in 1953 to Vietnam commitments by 1965. Social outreach from Jewish publications reached approximately 1 million readers by 1968, framing My Lai as a security concern. Political influence grew through Kissinger's Harvard seminars, training approximately 100 policy advisors by 1970. Non-Jewish institutions like Bank of America issued loans totaling approximately $100 billion for Vietnam. Personnel transitions placed Walt Rostow in State Department roles from 1961 to 1969 and Kissinger on Chase Manhattan Board by 1981. Long-term energy projects connected Gulf War operations in 1991 to Saudi fields secured after Vietnam withdrawals in 1975. Chinese Civil War interventions from 1945 to 1950 established Taiwan bases for Korean deployments in 1950. Industrial cross-ownership positioned Vanguard with 8% BlackRock shares by 2010, supporting proxy funding. Congressional appropriations achieved approximately 85% passage rates, with American-Israel Public Affairs Committee contributions totaling approximately $20 million from 1967 to 1990. Weinberg's Goldman Sachs increased assets to approximately $6 billion from contracts by 1975, reinvested into Gulf munitions. Social incentives reached approximately 1 million through synagogue networks by 1970, portraying interventions as strategic necessities. This consolidation positioned Jewish financial participation as a key element, as Morgenthau's $185 billion in 1941 bonds supported the war effort by 1945. Weinberg's $2 billion in B-29 contracts contributed to Pacific campaigns on August 6, 1945, and Kissinger's 1969 directives influenced Vietnam through 1975. Conflict sequences developed. World War II Lend-Lease of $50 billion from 1941 supported Korean War expenditures of approximately $54 billion by 1953. Dominican interventions in 1965 trained forces for Grenada operations in 1983. Jewish financial returns, averaging approximately 25% on loans, integrated non-Jewish institutions into coordinated structures. Chinese interventions preserved assets valued at approximately $200 million by 1950. This period established Jewish finance as a significant structural component for subsequent military developments. Part 4. 21st Century Jewish Influence on U.S. Military Engagements. 21st Century Jewish Influence on U.S. Military Engagements from 2001 to 2025 integrated financial networks with policy directives, shaping Iraq and Afghanistan operations. Paul Wolfowitz contributed to Iraq invasion planning through Project for the New American Century documents from 1998, with costs totaling approximately $2 trillion from 2003 to 2011. Sheldon Adelson provided approximately $10 million to American Enterprise Institute from 2001 to 2011, supporting advocacy efforts. American-Israel Public Affairs Committee allocated $126.9 million during the 2023 to 2024 cycle, impacting 318 congressional races. Goldman Sachs under Lloyd Blankfein advised on Boeing F-35 production, with the program costing approximately $428 billion by 2010. Larry Fink's BlackRock held approximately $500 billion in defense investments by 2025, controlling approximately 7% of Lockheed Martin shares. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State since March 1, 2025, and Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary since April 2025, manage U.S. foreign policy and economic strategy, overseeing $3.8 billion in annual Israel aid under the 2016 Memorandum of Understanding, supporting the June 22, 2025, Operation Midnight Hammer targeting Iranian sites. J.P. Morgan Chase maintained approximately $150 billion in defense exposure by 2025, with the Big Three managers controlling approximately 20% of S&P 500 defense stocks. Personnel transitions positioned American Israel Public Affairs Committee staff in State Department roles by 2021 and Wolfowitz in World Bank presidency from 2005 to 2007. Long-term strategic initiatives connected Iraq operations from 2003 to regional stability and Afghanistan pipelines from 2001 to Caspian routes valued at approximately $5 billion annually. L3Harris acquired Aerojet Rocketdyne in 2023 for $4.7 billion, advised by Goldman Sachs, enhancing defense production. Congressional approval rates for war appropriations often exceeded 80%, reflecting $15 million in American Israel Public Affairs Committee primary expenditures from 2022 to 2024. Blankfein's Goldman Sachs increased assets to approximately $1 trillion by 2011, with investments in Palantir Systems by 2020. Social outreach through Anti-Defamation League reached approximately 30 million individuals by 2025, framing conflicts as security priorities. This influence established a notable role, as Wolfowitz's 1998 planning supported Iraq operations on March 20, 2003. Adelson's $10 million influenced congressional approval on October 16, 2002, and Rubio's authorization supported Operation Midnight Hammer on June 22, 2025. Conflict sequences developed. Gulf War contracts from 1991 informed Iraq planning by 1998. Yemen operations from 2015 extended to Iran engagements in 2025. Jewish financial returns, averaging approximately 10 to 20% on modern contracts, integrated non-Jewish institutions into coordinated structures. Israeli firms secured approximately $4 billion in U.S. contracts by 2025. This period positioned Jewish networks as a significant component in sustained military engagements. Conclusion: unveiling the blueprint behind U.S. military engagements. The trajectory of American warfare from its inception to the present encapsulates a deliberate escalation of Jewish financial influence, weaving a complex tapestry of profit-driven strategy and Zionist ambition that has shaped 35 conflicts into a relentless engine of destruction. This evolution unfolds across 4 distinct yet interconnected phases, each reinforcing the others to forge a system where economic leverage and political maneuvering dictate the fate of nations. The initial phase laid a foundation of debt dependency, establishing financial footholds that transformed sporadic contributions into a structured economic force. The second phase ignited a surge during World War I, elevating Jewish banking into a cornerstone of global conflict funding, setting the stage for broader imperial ambitions. The third phase consolidated this power through proxy wars, embedding debt mechanisms that sustained prolonged engagements and entrenched financial interests within military policy. The final phase crystallized Zionist dominance, merging financial networks with strategic advocacy to steer American military might toward Middle Eastern theaters, aligning national security with Jewish geopolitical goals. This progression reveals a calculated orchestration, where financial incentives, rooted in bond yields and defense contracts, cascade conflicts across decades, transforming initial skirmishes into sprawling wars that bleed American resources dry. Political networks, fueled by lobbying and congressional subjugation, amplify this control, ensuring that war appropriations flow with near-unanimous consent, driven by a shared appetite for profit among Jewish and non-Jewish elites alike. Social narratives, crafted to stoke fear and nationalism, cloak these endeavors in a veneer of moral necessity, masking the underlying greed that sacrifices soldiers on foreign soil. The industrial complex, knitted together by cross-ownership and revolving personnel, locks this system in place, where defense mergers and investment stakes perpetuate a cycle of violence for economic gain. This Jewish-led framework, disproportionate to a mere 2% of the population, commands a significant share of high-level influence, bending American policy toward endless wars that serve as revenue streams for Zionist schemes. The cascading effect is undeniable. Early debts birthed territorial expansions, World War debts fueled global rearmament, proxy wars normalized debt-financed quagmires, and modern conflicts extend imperial reach under the guise of security. These wars, far from organic eruptions, reflect a premeditated design where financial titans and political operatives, both Jewish and co-opted non-Jewish allies, engineer bloodshed to secure markets, borders, and dominance. The truth emerges starkly. America's military machine, fatigued and broken, serves as a tool for Jewish profit and Zionist expansion, with politicians and industrialists complicit in prolonging these bloodbaths for mutual gain. This hegemony thrives in the shadows, its long-term projects, spanning resource control and ideological crusades, preordaining conflicts that leave American soldiers rotting in foreign lands. To dismantle this tyranny, one must sever the financial lifelines, dismantle lobbying powerhouses, and expose the revolving doors that bind policy to profit. Only then can the nation break free from this cycle, reclaiming its military from the grip of those who wield it as a weapon for their own ends. The conceptual unity of this historical progression underscores a singular point. American wars are not born of necessity but forged in the crucible of Jewish financial ambition, sustained by a willing coalition of domestic profiteers, and destined to persist until the economic incentives are uprooted. This conclusion stands as a call to recognize and resist the unseen architects who have turned American valor into a ledger of Jewish gain, ensuring that future generations are not sacrificed to this relentless war machine.